David Johnson. I'm working on a new collection of poems which will have a common theme of men, housework and domestic appliances. I'm thinking of calling it To Sweep, Perchance to Clean, or maybe even Of Dyson Men, I don't know. And this is the story of Danny and the dishwasher. Tired of washing plates by hand, Danny saved and Danny planned to buy the latest from Zanussi. He checked them all, he could be choosy. He wanted one with turbo rinse, that dealt with grease and weak old mince, that did not balk at pots and pans, that did the job, well, just like a man. The K64 with auto spin was the one that he plumbed in. Trial wash went like a dream. How his plate and spoon did gleam, how his deep fat fryer glistened like some masterwork by Titian. Then he washed his bowl and mug, his knife, his fork, his water jug, how they shimmered, how they twinkled, like those diamonds Damien sprinkled on that tasteless platinum skull. Yet one thing still made Dan's life dull: underutilization. The machine cried out, it seemed to Danny, "Fill me, every nook and cranny, stuff me full of grimy things, objects to which ordure clings, bung them in, power me up, every tea and coffee cup, and that drive chain from your Yamaha, those medals and their insignia, that stainless steel socket set, your carving of a white egret," and once started, he could not cease. He loaded in his bonsai trees. He loaded in the neighbour's cat, his model of a ziggurat, yet still it did not seem enough, and Dan was running out of stuff to satisfy the K64 with its cries of more encore. Yet everything was clean and sparkling, as Dan perceived his world more darkly. He knew the only way for peace, the only way to find true ease, was to make one final loading. So he stripped off all his clothing and curled inside the K64, pressed full cycle and closed the door. When his neighbour came around, he was amazed by what he found. Every item in Dan's bedsit glinted as if it had been lit by 100,000 sunbeams, and there, centre stage, as in a dream, was Danny staring out the door of that insatiable K64, quite dead, of course, but very clean. At last at one with his machine. Bristol is a great place to live. If you want a therapist, all you need to do is you go outside the front door, stand on the pavement, put your hand up like hailing a taxi and say, "Therapy!" And you're almost crushed in the rush of people waiting for cars, etc. And I believe there's one who says, "I do whisper therapy." Little you know that Madonna and Guy are doing whisper therapy. Anyway, I went to see my therapist the other day. I was feeling low, down, in a blue sort of way. "Ramona," I said, because we're on first name terms, "why do women treat me like I'm covered in germs and I'm worried all the time, in a state of perturbation? The only sex I get these days is in my imagination." "David," she replied, "she's informal like that. I'm going to break my rules this once and have a two-way chat, so concentrate whilst I give this piece of good advice. Pin back your luggles, I will not say it twice. Stop dribbling and leering at anything in skirts. Chuck out that collection of revolting nylon shirts. Read more, and I don't mean just Auto Trader. Snigger less at fart jokes, don't act like some first grader." And once started, there was no holding her back. She was like Donald Rumsfeld, relishing attack. "Ramona," I said, this isn't what I pay for. This is not the listening ear I come every day for." "Shut up, you worm, Ramona yelled. You're getting this for free. I've had 5 years of your whinging, and you'll listen to me. And when I've finished fully, you can get up out of that chair, find another therapist, don't ever come back here. She was incandescent, a Valkyrie of rages, and yet I begged her. It's pathetic. I mean, I begged her not to strike me from our clients' pages. Ramona, I protested. What would Carl or Sigmund think if they heard you yelling at me like you're much the worse for drink? She riposted, frankly, Dave, I don't give a monkeys about those dead Germanic psychiatric flunkies. They never had to deal with someone quite as dire as you, and if they had, I'm sure that they'd see my point of view. So that was how we parted, my therapist and me. Strangely, I feel better psychologically. Whilst she, I hear, is suffering financially. I mean, after all, I paid a large and regular fee. And you know, since I started washing more and changing underwear, my social life has picked up, which is why I'm standing here, whilst Ramona nightly goes to a self-help gestalt group. Nobody talks, everyone listens, and they drink vegan soup. Therapy? Best thing I've ever done. I heartily recommend it to each and everyone. I suppose as one gets older, you see your children grow up, and then you see sort of younger children around, you think, well, no children these days get any sort of childhood, really. They're all sort of exposed to all the horrors and worst things in the world right from the start. And of course, they seem to be completely indifferent to everything and heard it all and everything else. And just occasionally you can find a chink in their carapace of indifference. Oh, I could be a poet. It seems to me that the young of today are inured in every way to images of spilling guts and deaths by 1,000 cuts. They drink it in from Xbox games that feature violence that maims. They lap it up from plasma screens, those close-up clips of torture scenes. And when it comes to hardcore porn, they flick the channels and simply yawn. They find it hard to be impressed by sweaty, heaving, naked chests. But tell them that their mum and dad frequently have sex unclad. These little darlings blanch and wail, but this has gone beyond the pale. Describe how mum loved dad to mount her on that marbled kitchen counter, writhing in the breakfast debris. Ooh, 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 I've got a cornflake. Shrieking out in ecstasy, these hard-nosed, apathetic, whatever, offspring show outrage at this rogering. Now, all right, I do admit that when you're young, the thought of doing it for fun, much past the age of 41, does require imagination. The idea of copulation between the aged of our nation, and more than that, between one's folks, well, that's sick fantasy beyond a joke. And yet, it does go on, frequently, tenderly, energetically, despite those extra waistline inches, despite needing bathroom winches, despite those drooping bits and boobs, the furring up of ventricle tubes, the unnerving shortness of breath, that fear of post-coital death. Yes, despite all this, it does go on, way past the age of 41. Well, that's quite enough from me. You've been a lovely audience, and continue being a lovely audience.